Hi, I'm Lori Baldassi, and this is A Senior's View. Today we're going to talk about the family business. Now, everybody knows someone who owns a business, whose children go into the business. Everybody knows somebody who your parents own a business, but it's not really what you want to do. So what do parents do when it's time for a succession plan? Do you hand it over? Do you do it slowly? Is your business really one that you want your children to be in? Because businesses do date themselves. There is sometimes a shelf life for a business. So today to discuss all of this, we have the family business of the Palozzolo family. And that would be Peter Palazzolo, who I'm sure many know as a local talented musician and the owner of the Canadian Conservatory of Music. We have his daughter, Christee Palace, who is a musician living in Toronto, pursuing the family dream. We also have Alynn Godfroy from Godfroy Financial. She's going to tell you how to do that succession plan financially. And we also have Heather Ostertag. Heather Ostertag is an Order of Canada winner for her work in the music industry. She's also one of the founders of the Canadian Country Music of Ontario Association. She's also the winner of many Factor Awards, as she was the CEO of Factor for over 25 years. And she's going to talk about how to make an informed decision, whether it's your business, whether it's your life, or if it's even in the music industry. Making an informed decision puts you on the path that's either right or wrong. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. So we're going to start with Pete Palazzolo. Pete, when was the first time you stepped on stage and said, "Nope, this is what I want to do"?
Well, it's kind of funny. It was normal in my house at Christmas gatherings when I was 6, 7, 8, 9. We always had family over that everybody played instruments, all my siblings, except me. I didn't. All my older siblings played. So my dad built a little stage in the basement of our house in the West End here in Windsor. And every holiday we all got together and everybody sang and played. Even the uncles would get up there and sing. My sisters played accordion. My cousins played accordion. My brother played guitar. My other cousin played saxophone and guitar. Everybody was playing except me. So it was kind of like always around when I was little. And I was more into sports. I wasn't really into music way back then, but it was around me. So it was kind of filtering into me, even though I didn't know it was. But the first time I actually played somewhere and I knew, okay, this is really something. I was 15, played at my grade school. So that was pretty neat because I started playing when I was 14 and I've been playing for about a year. And I mean, here all my siblings have already been playing for 7, 8, 9 years by the time they were 15, but I kind of went into it backwards. I didn't want to be a musician. Didn't want to play music, but when I was 14, I had heart surgery. And I went out for the football team at Forster, the high school, and I needed a doctor's note in order to play, saying that I was healthy enough to play. I'd never been sick a day in my life, so my mom never took me for checkups. She didn't need to. I was never sick. Perfect attendance all the way through grade school. On grade 9, I needed this doctor's certificate, and they found out I had a heart murmur and that I had to stop all sports immediately. So it was kind of devastating. It was a really bad time for me. And my brother, I remember, came to me and said, listen, this is maybe a good time for you to consider playing an instrument. There's nothing else to do. And, you're feeling sorry for yourself. Do something with your time. I have an acoustic guitar in our bedroom. We shared a bedroom at the time. He said, take it out and do something with it, stop moping. So I tried it a few times and I was 14, hurt my fingers. I had nothing else to do. And didn't really stick in the beginning. It took about 3 months before I could actually even play a chord. But I played a little longer every day. And then, a year later, I just started getting good. And I started a band with some friends and they booked us at my grade school. And that was the first time I realized that, boy, this is fun. I could do this maybe. That was it.
So when you graduated from high school and people went off to all different kinds of jobs, you stayed in the music business.
I did. At the same time, I had started gigging really soon. Like 15 is early to gig, even if you've only been playing for a year. If you've been playing for 5 years, even 15 is still early to gig for most musicians. But I mean, I started gigging regularly when I was 16. So by the time I had to make a decision for university, it was a no-brainer. Went into music because I'd already played about 500 gigs by the time I was 18. So at the time back, I'm sure you remember this, Lori, we used to play 6 nights a week.
Yep.
And you played in the States, you played in Leamington, you played in Chat, you played everywhere, London, wherever there was a gig to play. And you played 6 nights a week. So it was great because you set up on a Monday and tear down on a Sunday. So it was pretty awesome. So I played so many gigs that by the time I had to make a decision for university, it was almost, well, I'm so deep in the music, I'm loving it. I may as well begin to understand, things I don't understand about music, which is more of the theoretical concepts and reading music at a high level, and maybe even composition and analytics for classical music. So these are some of the things that I got into, which I'm so thankful I did, because I mean, here I am in a conservatory that I've run for 35 years almost. And part of my job is making sure curriculums are in place for all the instruments we teach, making sure that when the studio is hired out, I'm the producer here. So if people need string parts on their songs, I know how to do that. All I got to do is see the chord progression, and I can already hear it in my head, what I want to do. So, it was a no-brainer for me going into university to study music, and I'm thankful that I did.
So you went into university pretty well ahead of the game because you had played so much. Then you had a record label at one time, and how many songs have you written?
Oh, well over 1,000.
Yeah, so I was going to say over 1,000 songs.
Yeah, it's funny. You would think that I went into university ahead of the game, but I really was behind the game because it was a classical school I went to. And here I am, a rock musician with my hair this big, literally. You remember me. and everybody else was very short hair and prim and proper. And I went in there and stuck out like a sore thumb. And I remember people there laughing at me just because of how I looked, which was odd because in the circles I hung out with, they would have got laughed at for the way they looked. Yeah. And it was the other way around, and it was, I was very much uncomfortable there for a long time. The only thing that was comforting was I was learning stuff that I knew I was really digging. This is really awesome. And I know it's going to help me. And it turned me on to different things too, that I never would have had a chance to even think about. Like I would have never found out that I love Mozart string quartets. And then to analyze those and understand 4 different instruments creating like this wall of sound and knowing the theory behind that. I mean, I was learning Led Zeppelin songs. They're so far apart, it's polar opposites, So it seems like musically I might have been ahead, maybe in terms of performance and stuff and I wasn't afraid to be in front of people. So the live aspect of university was you had to play a recital in front of your peers, and that was a piece of cake for me because I already done 500 gigs with some of them. Some of my peers had never played in front of 10 people. So I was ahead in that respect, but much further behind in a lot of other respects. But, after a year, I really caught up fast. And I'd say by my second year, I was even, or I think I was further ahead than most because of my background. I was able to kind of figure out a way to kind of merge all these ideas and different styles in my head. It was pretty awesome. I loved it.
So you've had the Canadian Conservatory of Music for 35 years now. So you made the jump from being a professional musician in the fact that you played live all the time and you wrote to teaching, which is another business, because when you're a musician, it's a business. You're a small business. When you go into the teaching, that's another part of this business. So was the transition of moving from the on stage, the writing and the playing, a big jump for you to go into a studio that you run and you teach and, like you say, the curriculum?
That's a great question. I'll tell you what really happened. They were always overlapped. There wasn't a transition where I ended this and started this. Everything has always been overlapped. All the different musical hats I've ever worn have always overlapped, and they've always been around. I started playing guitar when I was 14. I started teaching high school kids when I was 16, going to their house after school. I had 3 or 4 students. Way back then, I was 16 years old. When I was gigging, playing, 280 gigs a year, I was teaching every Saturday in my mom's basement. Mm-hmm. And one of those students was Jeff Martin from the Tea Party.
Oh, jeez.
So I taught him in my mom's basement with his dad sitting right beside him, So, I mean, they've always overlapped, and I always did it for extra money. And I think that was the main reason in the beginning. I needed extra money because, you don't make a heck of a lot when you're gigging, especially when a Marshall amplifier costs, $1,300 in 1979. That's huge money. So you buy an amp and, you borrow money off your parents and you owe them for 8 months. So every penny you make is gone before you even, earn it. So, I mean, it was, everything was overlapped. There was no clear cut moment where, I just stopped on a dime and said, that's it. After university, I had to make a decision. We were offered a tour with my band Soldier in the early 80s. So I had to make a decision. It conflicted with school, so I didn't finish university. In my 3rd year, I had that decision to make. And the last year and a half, there's going to be a lot of concepts of teaching. And at that time, I thought, I don't think I need help for somebody to tell me how to teach. I know what I know, and I know how to kind of impart my wisdom to somebody else about what I know. So I took a gamble. I said, I'm going on tour with the band. My brother and my cousin were in the band. So I didn't finish that university degree that I started. And when we went on tour, it was tough because my parents were very disappointed in me, especially with my dad. I mean, it was really rough. It was like a huge wall that was built between us. He was very much against that. He thought I was, it's funny because I can hear him in my head. He'd say, "You wasted your life," with his Italian accent, And I mean, it cuts so deeply when your dad says you're wasting your life. And thankfully, before he passed, everything was, blended, or everything was back normal, and everything, we were close again, and it was nice. But, for the time that, I decided to leave and not finish university, all I did was tour, and I didn't teach because I wasn't home. And then I went over to the States because I had issues with my vocal cords. I lost my voice in 1983, and I had to stop singing for a year. I had to stop speaking for 3 months. So Soldier broke up, and I have nothing. So I started teaching again. Well, then I got a call from a studio in the States to go over there and be a session player. They saw my band at Harpo's just before I developed vocal problems, and they took my name and number, and they called me and asked me if I want the session gig. And I turned it down at the time because we were gigging, and I didn't realize I would need a gig pretty soon. So 3 months later, after the band broke up, I happened to call them, and they said, "Look, when we saw you at Harpo's, you sing, you play keys, you play bass, you play guitar." Because we had this gimmick where for one set, everyone rotate and play everything, right? And they thought that if they hired one Canadian, it would replace 4 Americans, and that would save a lot of money for them, right? So I took the gig, and I stayed there for 14 months, and the deal was they couldn't pay me. And at first I thought, well, that's lame. But they did say I could have the run of the studio from 11 o'clock at night till 6 in the morning. And that's where I learned how to do all my studio stuff, all analog, no computers yet, 1984, right? So that's what I was doing at that time. And then in about 1985, with your help, we started London. And at the time you were at, what do they call it? OMFM.
Laser Rockin' OMFM.
Right. And I came back to Windsor, my voice healed, and I started studying opera because I knew I had issues with my vocal cords and the way I sang. So I started studying opera privately from the university prof I knew 3 years before. So at that point, we started London, and then you helped us with that. Remember the high school?
Oh, yeah, Rock and Roll High School. We, what happened was Coca-Cola wanted to get into the high schools because there were only Pepsi machines there. So they came to me and they said, you have any ideas about, getting into high schools? And at that time, you could not solicit to students. There was like a firm rule. So I went to the school and I said, what if we gave you a concert and you got to keep the money? And they were like, well, who's paying the band? I said, Coca-Cola. And they said, well, the kids have to have something other than just getting the money. So I went in and I taught promotion and production. And then I taped the students saying the Laser Rockin' Ohm Top 20 Countdown, and I taught them how to put on an event. This is your production schedule. This is your load-in. And I think we did that, Pete. We sold out. We did it once a month for the school years, and we did it all across Windsor. Yes. And Coca-Cola, in every school we did, they switched the machines from Pepsi to Coke. So and then someone else took it. And I think it's a little thing called the Much Music Dance Party. They took the essence of what I did, and they did the Much Music Dance Parties with that. So,
those things that you did for us, our band blew up after.
Oh, I didn't know that. I would ask for more money.
Oh, man, like the band, that we got a record deal because of that. We had so much popularity from that. Then we got a record deal.
They were very popular.
Yeah, it was very popular at the time, and you guys played us regularly on the radio. And I mean, it was pretty cool because I had trouble even walking through the mall. People were hounding me. It was like, at that time I felt like a rock star. It was something else. But yeah, the band was very popular, and thanks in part to you for sure. Oh, and then we got the record deal, and then that's probably one of those moments you were talking about. I just thought of that. When the record company went bankrupt before our second album, that's when I came back to Windsor and I started teaching full time because I knew I wanted to get married, have kids, and have somewhat of a normal life. So I did make, I know I didn't say that a moment ago, but I did make a conscious effort to settle down a bit. And I still wanted to write though. So I wanted to build a studio, and I wanted to, have enough money to raise a family, buy a house, settle down, build some kind of studio, which is what I have now. And that's when the conservatory came for sale. And that would have been 1989 or 90. So the conservatory came up for sale, and a real estate agent who had known my bands over the years knew I got out of the business, and I was teaching in my mom's basement again. I had to go back home and say, Mom, can I live here and can I work in your basement? So I had about 40 students a week in my mom's basement. The conservatory came up for sale, and a guy called me and said, you want to buy it? It's only this much. And I thought, man, I don't want to do that. So I turned him down. I said, no. Continue to teach in my mom's basement. About 4 months later, he called me again. He said, the guy dropped this price. You want it? Now it's this. And I said, nah, I don't want to turn into just I have dreams of still writing music. If I pick this thing up, I know how I am. I'm going to work so hard at it and forget about the rest of what I want to do. So I said no again. 2 months later, he said he dropped it again. And it was so cheap, I couldn't afford not to. So I took it. And of course, for 2 years, it killed my music career because I had to get my family up and running. I got married, had to get my business up and running. And I developed curriculums for piano, guitar, my own curriculums that I knew would be a blend of classical and pop. And I knew that nobody else was doing that. So I thought if I could offer that, it would be interesting because I could offer pop, rock, blues, jazz, country, classical, everything blended in one in a real cool curriculum that balanced reading music, ear training, improvisation, playing songs, the whole thing. So I went crazy on that for 2-3 years. And then I started, with money I'm earning, I started buying pieces. Every 3 months, okay, I got a mixer. Okay, I got speakers. Okay, I got an EQ. I got a compressor. Okay, I got a new amp, a couple new guitars, new bass. Never owned a bass before, right? And then I started producing different bands. So, it's cool because now I produce music 20 hours a week and I teach 25 hours a week. And that's been my formula for 35 years, right? So that's basically how my whole career went down. It was kind of like everything I did went backwards. I never went in forwards. It was like I just backed into it somehow,
Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of sweat equity that goes into the music industry. And a lot of times the sweat equity does not have a return on the investment. It's a hard road. I don't think a lot of people really even to this day understand how much people have to sacrifice to be a musician. And there are more opportunities now, I'd say, with the streaming, and you can do your own videos and things like that. But it's a hard road to go to. So now you've been through all of this. Like you say, the record label went under, things they play your song, they don't play your song. So we have Christee. You've seen your dad go through all of this. How did you feel, especially, and Pete, let's hear from Christee first. How did you approach saying, Dad, this is what I want to do?
You know what? To be honest, I didn't know that it was what I wanted to do. I knew that I had a passion for music. I knew that I loved to write. I loved performing. I knew all of that, but I kind of looked at my family, and I think a little part of me sort of fell into that sort of mindset of, maybe music is just, for fun. Maybe that's just on the side. It's your passion, but you should become a teacher. Because like he said, right now, all my aunts and uncles and cousins, like, ironically, they're all teachers, but they're all in music, right? They all are musicians in some capacity. So I fell into that, I think. I always just kind of did it on the side, and I did it for myself. And I went off to university. I was in drama and education at the University of Windsor, and I was going to get my degree and go to teachers college. I was going to do all of that. And it was when I had first started university. I think I was 20. I think I was 20 years old, and an opportunity came up at Caesars, actually, the Coliseum. They were putting together a 60s tribute show, and I was actually approached by Mike Lesperance, who asked me to be a part of it. And at first I was like, "Ooh, I don't know if I can handle that." I don't know, because I was, I would have been performing with, musicians that were just super awesome, and I had, admired my entire life, and I was super intimidated by that. But I ended up taking the opportunity, and I think that was the first time that I got up on that stage. How many people are in the Coliseum? 6,000?
5,000.
Yeah. So I was 20, and that was the biggest audience I'd ever performed in front of course, at the time. And when I did that, I was like, man, like I really held my own, and I pulled it off. And I was, like I said, I was 20, and everyone else was, at least mid-30s. So definitely had a lot of experience on me at the time. And I just loved it. I loved performing for that big crowd. And so that was really the first time that I was like, like, maybe there's something to this. Maybe this is a little bit more than what I think. And it wasn't until halfway through university that another opportunity came my way. And my dad can speak to this as well. This was for the International Children's Games, and they were hosted in Windsor. And they held a contest for the theme song. And my dad ended up writing one, and he ended up winning. And as part of that prize, if you win, you got the opportunity to open up for the children's games at the WFCU Center and perform it. So of course it was my voice on the recording. So I ended up performing there, and that was, I think, in front of 8,000 people and 10,000 people, and televised in all the countries of all the kids that were there. And that was the moment for me that sealed the deal, because I did that, and just you can't really explain it unless you're a performer and you've performed in front of that kind of crowd. You can't explain the feeling. It's just, euphoric. But I remember that moment. I got off the stage after I had performed, and I just couldn't believe that I was even capable of doing something like that. And I ran off stage and I saw my dad. And the first thing I did, he'll speak to this, I ran right to him and I hugged him and I just cried. And I'm like, I want to do this. This is what I want. This is what I want to do. And I'll always remember that moment, because it was so clear in my mind that that's what I wanted. So I think shortly after that, I said to him, I don't want to be in university anymore. I don't want to do this. But I'm sure with all his wisdom and experience, he said, no, you're going to finish school. But while you're finishing
Pete, did you
school,
say to her like you did to your dad said to you, you're ruining your life?
Luckily, no, because he had experienced that, right? It's not really nice to hear those words. No, he was great. He said, I'll make you a deal. You're going to finish your degree. And while you do, I'll help you in any way that you need. We'll record your stuff. We'll do whatever we need to do to get your career moving. And when you finish university, then you can go off. You can do whatever you need to do, and I'll help you. So that's what he said. I got his blessing in that regard. But yeah, that was pretty much it. That was the moment for sure where it was very clear to me that that's what I wanted.
So right now, you opened for the Indie Awards at the Phoenix Concert Theatre in Toronto, and you won the Jim Beam National Talent Search, in which you received an Indie Award. You've been releasing things online, streaming back to back to back to back. And each one is greater than the next one. So you've got a really, you're what I would say is you're in the thick of it. You are in the mode of moving, and you've moved to Toronto, and you've just signed something rather spectacular, haven't you?
Yes, I have. I just recently signed my first publishing deal, which I guess is more so like a sync licensing deal, which is fantastic for me. And again, we're speaking to, musicians and trying to make a living off of this. And this is one of the best ways, especially now, this day and age. And, sometimes we talk about music it's in a lot of ways, it's easier for artists now to be, to make a living and to be discovered or whatnot. But I think in a lot of ways, it's actually a lot harder. And with having this, it just gives me another outlet to continue creating and doing what I love to do, and actually making money and feeling like, I'm somewhat successful and profitable. And that was really great news for sure, especially considering the last, year and a half to 2 years with everything that's been happening with COVID and whatnot, because that was a whole other thing. But it was very good news to have for sure.
Yes. Well, so do you, like your dad kind of did the slow walk into a bricks and mortar business, because as a musician, you're a small business. You're a small business owner, and your product is you. So yes. Do you look at yourself as a business?
I think in a lot of ways I have to. I have to survive, right? And especially moving to Toronto, that was not an easy decision. Leading up to that, I was living at home, and I had been teaching, but I had the security, right? And once you move out, let alone in Toronto, but if you're just moving out on your own in general, that's already a huge step, and you want to make sure that you have all your ducks in a row and you're taking care of yourself. And moving to Toronto is huge. It's not cheap being here, and you have to do everything you possibly can to survive and feel like you're making it in some capacity, right? So,
and now we're going to we've talked about the emotional and the passion and the drive that you've both had to be in this business and succeed in this business, which, is one day you're great, one day you're not. I mean, it's a really hard emotional roller coaster, even financially to go through. So we have Alynn Godfroy from Godfroy Financial, and she's going to talk a little bit, how do they manage the finances of being a small business that you never know what's going to happen next?
I guess the key is looking at how you've structured your business. So do you have a corporation? Pete, have you incorporated your business, or how have
I'm incorporated.
You are
yeah,
incorporated.
Christee
Okay.
isn't.
Okay. So the key then is to determine, do you continue to be the sole, owner of the corporation? Does it make sense at some point to bring your daughter into the corporation? Does she do things separately? I don't know if you've had any discussion about that yet, or.
We've talked about it a little bit. I think I'm about 3-4 years away from, making some kind of decision.
Ooh,
Right
TikTok,
now, she's-
Christy.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah.
Right now she's probably in the busiest part of her life where things are just taking off for her. So I think 3-4 more years of her figuring out how things fall and how things land. And we have spoken about possibility of her eventually taking it over. Obviously, if she's living in Toronto, that could be difficult. So there is a possibility that she might not. Who knows? It really depends on where things land in the end. And like I said, I am incorporated. It would be easy to include her in that and to get her involved in that. But eventually, it's really going to have to be a thing of the distance between us. If she's in this, if she's in Toronto and I'm here, how's that going to go down?
But you
It's
also
tough to-
have 2 other children, correct?
I do. I have 3 other
Yeah.
children, and none of them would be, I don't think any of them would be quite, would be a perfect fit for this business like she would be. I mean, I know that for a fact. She is the perfect fit for this, but in the end, it has to work for her.
Mm-hmm.
I would never say, look, I wouldn't give her a guilt trip and say, if you don't take it, if it doesn't work out that way, then maybe somebody else, one of my teachers will buy it, or I don't know. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Still, I think still 3-4 years away.
So, Alynn, what advice would you give them going forward about finances? Like even for Pete, he's saying 4 years he's looking at retirement. Mm-hmm. What advice would you give him regarding his finances for his business going forward?
I guess the biggest key would be determining, once you are going to go into retirement mode, determining, have you amassed enough money and assets so that you can sustain your lifestyle for the rest of your life? And something else to maybe consider, if you have 3 other kids, having a discussion with them, even though they may not be as musically inclined, perhaps you might have one that is has a business background. I have a client, they own a small greenhouse out in Leamington, and one of the kids went to school for horticulture, and he didn't even think anything of it, and they had some family things start to happen, and then the son said, "Dad, I'd really like to get involved in the business too." He didn't want to do the horticulture background, but he wanted to apply his skills that he was learning in business school. So perhaps having a discussion, depending on what the family dynamic is, maybe one of your other kids, there might be the ability to involve them in your business. So I see that a lot happen with business owners where, one kid feels like they're left out. They've never really shown an interest, but at the same time, sometimes they're not asked if they have an interest in the business. So I'm not sure what the family dynamic is, if there is somebody that might be interested in the business, but definitely worth maybe a conversation with your family about.
Now, I've left the best for last. Heather, how does Pete and Christee make this decision on Christee moving forward? And you know the industry inside and out, and you understand where Pete's coming from a business aspect for the bricks and mortar that he has. What advice would you give them going forward to make the best informed decision for a path forward? And keep in mind, he has 3 other children.
For the child. Pete, hats off to you and congrats for everything that you've done with your career to date.
Thank you.
I think the good news is that there is a window right now where a definitive decision doesn't need to be made because Christee, like your father said, you're in a different place right now. And you don't know what you don't know that you don't know that's going to be happening for you creatively. And that may, while right now it can seem that, okay, we're going to put this plan together. And in 4 years, I'm going to X, Y, Z. I think that would be a mistake. I think that, and I think your father would agree with me on this, you need to stay focused on what it is that's inspiring you. And in listening to you speaking, and this may turn this discussion on its ear, but I'm asked for my opinion, and so that's what I'm giving. Your performance, and you're realizing this is what I want to do. It may not be the same path that your father's on. You know, you're loving the performance, and that's a completely different thing than sitting in a studio, teaching people, producing recordings and stuff. So, and I think what Alynn said about talking to your other children is a really good idea because there's different skill sets that can be brought to the table and they can be engaged. And even if they didn't want to be involved, the conversation is important so that it's inclusive as recognizing them as part of your family. But if you are interested in moving in that direction, I'd recommend first one thing, make sure that you have tapped out all resources for all revenue streams for yourselves and everybody else. And that includes, you know, being with SOCAN, AMROC, get your neighboring rights, make sure you're signed up with the streaming services and you're maximizing the various revenue streams that are out there. Because while in some respects it may be easier to make a recording, there is so much clutter out there in the industry. It's really hard to get yourself discovered through it. And congrats on getting a publishing deal, because that's the start. If I can ask, who's publishing, who are you working with as a publisher?
So this is an independent company from the States. They're called Atrium Music, and they're based in California. So
right on. So yeah, hopefully you're keeping some of the rights for yourself.
yes.
Did you, that'd be one thing I would ask. Did you have a lawyer look at your agreement?
I don't think we did, but my dad took a look at it. I mean, with all his experience and everything, I think it was pretty clear cut. I don't think there was anything a part of that I was concerned with, or my dad. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's important to make sure that my years of experience, I know that there have been deals that have been signed and there's been great advances given, and it's cost more than the advance to get out of the deal later, because you wake up and realize, ooh, I didn't realize that, I didn't know that, I didn't understand that piece. Right. You're lucky you've got your dad there as an anchor to what you're doing. Pete, do you really want to retire, or do you just want to step back a bit?
That's a good point. I would just step back. I don't think I would ever retire because I love this.
I can't see you doing that either, listening to your story.
You know, it's really funny. I'm so involved in music that if I have 10 days off for Christmas, it's like by the third day, I want to pick up a guitar and I would want to do some writing or recording, you know?
You're withdrawing.
Yeah. And, you know, it's really funny too, like even with the different aspects of social media today, my kids have been telling me to start a TikTok literally for 2-3 years. I have a YouTube channel that I never paid much attention to until the pandemic hit. So I started posting stuff regularly when my band gigs. I play in a classic rock tribute band. We play at casinos and festivals and stuff. Well, that dried up completely when the pandemic hit. So I started making, 3-4 minute videos, covers and originals on YouTube. And my kids were saying, you got to start a TikTok, man. I said, nah, I'm not doing that. So you're right about maximizing all of these other social media platforms, because there are streams there for income. And since then, I did start a TikTok with my daughter and my son getting on me about it. And it's funny because I've only had it for 2 months, and a couple of things went, I don't know if you would call that viral. Would you call that viral?
Yeah.
Christee?
It went viral. Yeah.
Yeah, it went viral. So now my TikTok, in 2 months, I have 14,000 followers, and I had 31 when I first started it. The one day I went to bed the next morning and had 6,000 followers, and now it's about 14,000. And one of my videos is approaching 1 million, and now all of the traffic from TikTok has gone over to YouTube and doubled my YouTube subscribers. So these are parts of the reasons I want to consider to retire, because I'd like to do other things like that. And eventually some of that will be other streams of income. And I probably will still stay here 2-3 days a week and maybe pass the management on to somebody else, whether it's Christee or one of my teachers or whatever,
I think it's a mistake to not pay attention to social media and whatever the new TikTok is. Facebook is kind of going by the by. Instagram, TikTok, all of these things, they're going to be revenue streams, and obviously by the numbers you've already got, that should be proof positive to you it works.
Yeah, I would have never done it. Literally, my kids poked me until
that's it's important that you listen to them. While you may be the parent, there is stuff that parents can learn from the children.
Absolutely.
And when it comes to this new technology and stuff, it's really important, because that's where there's going to be other alternative revenue streams, because let's face it, nobody's buying CDs anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you have to say, your business model that you started with, Pete, other than your conservatory, is gone. There's no bars to play anymore. There's no touring through bars. Like you could play 4 different bars in the city of Windsor before, or 20 in Toronto. That's gone. So your business has now taken another lap and grown, and through your daughter and younger people around you, you've moved your business to another level. Which is like, this show is a senior's view, but I think seniors are so different than our parents were, that if we keep our ears open and keep moving and going and learning, like you've just learned all these new things, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, your business will thrive, and then you can have a succession plan for maybe your sons will do the books and the marketing, and your daughter will be the creative spirit. So then I throw it over to Alynn to say, how do they go from, the Canadian Conservatory of Music with Pete to move to these, he's got these, TikTok fans, and now there can be a creative component, and now there's a media component. What's the next steps for them there financially for a succession plan?
I think, again, it comes back to having that conversation with your family to find out who wants to be involved. And if 1 or 2 or 3 of your kids don't want to be involved in the business, then you want to start looking at, as time goes by, how do you make it, you want to look at fairness, and you want to look at what's equitable, and what's fair and what's equitable isn't always the same, because obviously if you have kids that want to be in the business, they'll be rewarded financially working in the business. But then if you have kids that aren't going to be in the business, having that discussion about how you're going to leave some legacy to them is really important. So I would say first and foremost is having that discussion about what other passions are there in your family. Can somebody do your social media? Can somebody do the, the bookkeeping, accounting piece for you, the business aspect? I think that's the best step right now, is to determine, and you don't have to have all of the steps laid out, but to really get a good handle on who will continue on in the business versus who doesn't have any interest in it, I think would be the most important thing to do next.
Now, Heather brought up, go ahead, Heather.
Yeah, I was going to add to what Alynn was saying there. is if there are children that are interested in getting involved in the business, even though it may be down the road, it can be really beneficial because it's a different relationship with your family. We had a family business and it blew the family up, because you have a whole other dynamic that goes with it. And so if any of them are interested in aspects of it prior to it being formalized, it might not be a bad idea to have them do like an internship and see, because you may think you want to do it and then you're going, I don't want to do this. And it lets everybody off the hook easier. So I'd really recommend having a type of internship with any of your kids that are interested in getting involved, and knowing that both sides can say, this works, this doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. Pete, we've talked about you, we talked about your dad. We haven't talked about a really important person, your wife. I mean, do you both, are you one in thinking how everything is going to go, or was she not happy about Christee going, or?
Oh no, she's awesome. She's whatever the kids are into, she's right behind them. She's, I think in our family, I think Christee will agree, she's the rock in our family. She's, all of us lean on her all the time for everything. She's awesome. She's always encouraging for all the kids and whatever they're into. My son's into sports. My other son's into biomedicine. Christee's into music. My older daughter, is a school teacher now. She finished her master's and is working on her doctorate. So my son's an engineer and my other son wants to be a doctor. So, I mean, she's cool with everybody and she's really supportive. It doesn't matter what they want. I think she was more concerned, my wife was more concerned about what she saw on my face when Christee said she wanted to be a musician. I think that worried her because she saw that I was a little worried, but she wasn't.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell us why you were worried.
Well, I mean, you said it.
He knows the business.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, I mean, I've had my heart broken 150 times. It's very difficult. And, it's something I count myself very lucky that I've been able to make a fantastic living in music for 40 years. Granted, I've had to do it a lot of different ways. I've had to teach music. I've had to run a recording studio. I've written songs that one of them ended up on Oprah Winfrey, which basically put a great down payment up for me building my house. I've written my own guitar books and vocal books, and they bring income in. So I have a lot of sources of income. And if I had to choose just one source, I don't think I could have made a living. I had to really branch out, and that's what worried me. Because I just find the pressure on me was almost unbearable when I had 4 kids and they were small. It was a lot of pressure. It was very, very difficult. I would work 10 hours, come home, play with my kids for 4 or 5 hours, and then they'd go to bed and I'd grab my guitar and work on some music till 2:00 in the morning and then do it again the next day. This is very difficult. It's, I wouldn't recommend it for people who aren't, how can I say this?
Weak-willed.
If you don't have fire flowing through your veins, I don't recommend music.
Mm-hmm.
No.
You got to be willing to be kicked in the teeth, and then you got to be willing to get up again. And like I told Christee when she told me she wanted to do this, I was worried, but I also said, remember something, when you turn the radio on, songs play. Somebody wrote those songs. Why not you?
Mm-hmm.
If everybody said, I can't do this, there'd be no soundtracks on movies. There'd be no sound music in commercials. There'd be no tunes on the radio. If everybody gave up, what happens to art? Somebody has to say, no, damn it, I'm doing it. I'm doing this. And I know I was that person. I was that person that said, I'm not giving up. I'm going to make a living. I know my dad is pissed at me, and maybe I'll understand why one day, which I do now. But I didn't when I was 19, 20, 21, 22. We were butting heads every day. And I just couldn't figure out why he didn't understand that I was the person. You know, I'd say, Dad, you love listening to the radio in your pickup. Somebody wrote that song. That could be me. Oh, that's enough for you. That's enough for you. It's always somebody else. Why is it somebody else? Why can't it be me? So I tell Christee that, and I tell my students that, and the young kids that want to become musicians, which I've taught 6,000 students in the last 30 years, maybe more. Look, if you really want to do this, get serious. Don't waste time. And I'll leave you with one more thing. I always say this, and Christee knows this. If you want to do it, you better hold yourself up to some pretty stringent, practice schedules and writing schedules. So first thing I did for her is I mapped out what I did every day. I practiced 10 hours a day, maybe more. Then I went to gig at night, right? When I was young, from the time I was 16 till I was 28, I practiced all day on everything, guitar, now voice, now writing, now bass, now piano, over and over. So the rule is this: if you're not practicing and giving 5,000%, always remember somebody else is. That's it. That's the mantra you live by. And if you live by that, you have no regrets at the end of the day. Even if you don't achieve your goal, if this is your goal and you fall a little less, a little short, like I did, I fell a little short of what I truly wanted to do. But I'm truly happy now. I never bent. I stayed on course. I gave it 10,000%. I made a great living. I raised 4 great kids. They're all successful in their own right. Got a great marriage. My house is paid off. Awesome. And my house, the initial down payment on a house came from a song royalty. Song royalties over the years, right? So thank you, SoCan.
So, Christee,
Yes.
no stress here.
Yeah, thanks for that. No, everything that he said, it's true. Now that, it's a lot different when, you're living in your hometown city, like I said, with that security. The second you move into a big city, you are a little teeny tiny fish in a massive, massive pond. And you get to see what the industry is like. You get to see what the talent is like. And it's not a joke. Like you're a very, very small person, and if you're not holding up your end of it, that, it's very easy to get left behind. And it's just the truth. But I think one of the most useful lessons that he's ever taught me is just to be versatile, and not only to work hard, but, like he said, bring in multiple ways of, making income and trying to do as many things as possible in music. Not that you need to do things outside of that, but there's many different avenues to take for music. And even if you don't end up, exactly where you want to be, like you said, if you're working hard and you're doing everything you possibly can do, then at the end of the day, no regrets, and you're happy, right?
Financially, Alynn, is there steps that Christee can take to kind of secure herself financially? She says she's got all these different streams coming in. Are there any tax incentives or things like that she can tap into to help her move her along?
I'm assuming, when you do your taxes, are you claiming as a sole proprietor, or you haven't incorporated your business yet? Okay. So depending on what your income is, you may want to set up a corporation. So you can qualify for something called the small business deduction. So depending on what your income is, you probably don't want to discuss it on the podcast, but it may make sense for you in the future. Making sure that you build up some money in a tax-free savings. You're have gigs and things going on now. Obviously, we hope we don't have any more lockdowns, but if you're not able to go out and play, you want to make sure that you have a safety net for yourself.
Yeah.
Or, I always tell clients, you could, get the flu or an ailment for a week and it kicks your butt and it takes you another week to get moving again. And what happens, after you haven't worked for a couple of weeks is it hurts your pocketbook. So making sure that you have some emergency savings, I think, is really important. And again, depending on what your income stream is, maybe incorporating yourself may be a benefit for you in the future.
So for Pete, going forward for retirement, can you give him some ideas of how he may be able to step into retirement? Are there financial incentives for him as he moves out of his business?
I don't know so much as incentives. I think the key is to determine how much you're going to need to sustain yourself for the rest of your life. If you have a lot of money in your corporation and there is a chance that one or more of your kids may come into the corporation, perhaps looking at something called an estate freeze. So you freeze all of the assets that you've got now, and then it stops your future tax liability that is going to grow. So that might make sense. Again, I think it's back to that conversation with the family and what the vision is over the next few years. But that might be something that would be beneficial.
Yeah.
A
Heather.
question for Pete. You've got the revenue streams that are coming in from SoCan as a, I don't know if you're self-published or not.
Yes.
Okay, so you'd have the publishing, I'm assuming, is under the corporation, but the revenue that you would get as the writer, is that put into the corporation as well, or is that kept separate?
The way my corporation is set up, it's called Heart Gallery Communications.
Okay.
And Heart Gallery Communications has two arms. I've got the Canadian Conservatory, and I have my other company, which is Power Punch Music.
Which is you. Yeah.
Which is me, right. So I have it split so that the conservatory is a separate company. Heart Gallery Communications is kind of like the umbrella over Canadian Conservatory and Power Punch Music. And Power Punch Music is also the company that publishes my books that I write.
Yeah.
So the two books that I've written are under that, plus all the songs I've written over the years are under that. Two separate bank accounts.
Okay, but is because when you're talking about retirement, and this may be something that Alynn isn't aware of, you've got the two revenue streams from SoCan and MROC. Well, MROC is a completely different one because that's playing as a musician. But the SoCan revenue that you would receive as the publisher, and the SoCan revenue you would receive as the creator. Are both of those going into the company?
Well, when the publishing company gets paid, it goes into the company. Of course, my writer's share, there's a check made out to me.
Yes.
And that just goes into my personal, which I declare as a personal income.
Because
as well as my gigs. Like my gigs, I don't put through, I could just call it self-employment.
Okay, so then you would have, when you're getting into retirement, you will have an ongoing revenue stream, because just because you hang up your skates and aren't necessarily creating more stuff, you'll still have that private revenue stream coming in, and the rest into the business.
Yeah, which is kind of cool, because you set up a corporation and you think everything has to go through it, and it really doesn't. And in fact, I find it very flexible that I can gig and call that self-employed income. And
well, they are two different things. Yeah. One is you've got a corporation and it's generating revenue, and the other is you as an individual are working and generating money for yourself. Yeah,
I mean, initially when my band first started, I ran it through the corporation. I would bill the casino as, Power Punch Music, and I'd put it through there. But that was it was tedious that way, and even the guys in the band thought it was tedious. So we changed that and just made it look, this is self-employed income now, which was a lot easier in the end.
Yeah.
Okay, we have final thoughts here. Heather, you got one more. Let's wrap this up. What do you have to say going forward for the road for both of them, for an informed decision?
I would think that they keep the conversation going. Christee, you've got yourself an awesome father who's got a good knowledge of the industry. keep plugging into him as you're moving forward, but don't box yourself in to anything specific. Give yourself the freedom to be fully self-expressed as a creative individual, and let that path take you where it will. And Pete, for you, it will sort itself out what pieces of the business you're going to hand off. You're never really going to get rid of the creative. So it's looking at what do I really want to stop doing, and look for the right skill set to support you with it.
Alynn, do you have closing remarks or anything you can say to them?
I just want to say I think it's great that you're leaving a legacy to your daughter and the rest of your family too. So I commend you for all of your hard work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And all I have to say is this is Lori Baldassi. This is a Senior's View. And hey, millennials, Pete and I had to listen to the Archies so you could have Led Zeppelin. You're welcome. Thanks for tuning in. This is Lori Baldassi. This has been a Senior's View, the family business. Production staff, Lois Rindlisbacher. This podcast was produced by Sikander Salim. Thank you.